Okay, for those of you who don't know, the Morris County Chamber of Commerce has been a wonderful relationship in my life, and it's the best investment I make every year. And I'm a member for life, you'll be happy to know. And I asked Paul, and Paul said yes right away. Paul is the president of the chamber, and the thought was, well, you know, why do some of these companies want to know or care what's going on in Morristown if they're, let's say, an international company? Well, there's a lot of reasons. You want to be aware of who you're hiring, where you're hiring from. These people may live in Morristown. You want to be aware of the traffic patterns or whatever it might be and what's happening here. Our relationship with the chamber is wonderful. I recommend any of you to join. I think you would all get something out of it. And I would think over half this room are already chamber members, so you understand what a privilege it is to have Paul come this morning and spend some time with us. Give you a call.
Thank you very much, Chris. I am not going to spend any time this morning telling you what you already know. You know, Lee Wasserman and I were just talking about the fact that we have a very slow economy. It was interesting, 2 nights ago I was having dinner with the CEO of AMG National Trust Bank, and he was relating the story to me about how one of their clients has a $10 million house in Vail. He's a business person who wanted to borrow some money, and the bank got into this big conversation with the regulators and the SEC about how much money they could give this guy, and it was like he only wanted $2 or $3 million, right? He had a lot of equity, and he had a great balance sheet, and it was just a conversation about, you know, I'm not going to get into a Dodd-Frank discussion with you, but I mean, at some point, we have to figure out how the banking system can work to help people stay in business and be profitable and grow. And so that's just one issue, obviously, that's out there that you already know plenty about, so I'm not going to talk about it. I do want to talk about, though, what are we doing in Morris County? What's going on in Morris County that you should know about? And I think it's important, even though you might say after I get done talking, well, these are all big companies he's talking about. How does it really impact me? I think when you talk about, you know, the possibility of 10,000 jobs staying or leaving Morris County, I think that has a big impact on a lot of people potentially who are in business. So I don't want this to come across as a, you know, conversation about Honeywell and Novartis, and you're not Honeywell and Novartis in most cases, but I think some of these issues potentially have a huge impact on people in small and medium-sized businesses who hopefully are doing some business with some of these companies. So you've probably read about the whole Honeywell situation. Honeywell is in the process of revamping their corporate headquarters right up the street from us. They have 150 acres in Morris Township, 1,200 employees. You can imagine that a company like Honeywell with $38 billion a year in sales has options about where they can have their corporate headquarters, both domestically and internationally. The fact of the matter is, for a company like Honeywell, 55% of their sales today are outside of the U.S. And I know for a fact that there have been lots of states that have been wooing Honeywell to move their corporate headquarters out of New Jersey. So we've been working closely with Morris Township, with EPA, the governor's office, with Honeywell, obviously. And finally, a couple of weeks ago, Morris Township agreed to Honeywell's request for a zoning change. They are going to be revamping their corporate campus, tearing down some of the older buildings, building 250 Federalist-style townhouses on the property. We've been working with the Morris Building Trades Council and others relative to how that work might be allocated to a whole variety of people across the community. And so hopefully Honeywell is going to stay. People say to me, well, now that the zoning's done and they have their EDA thing, is it a done deal? And I say, you know, it's still not a done deal in my view. I mean, there's a lot more that still has to happen. I know that the Honeywell senior executive team was not happy about getting dragged through a 15-month hearing process in Morris Township to finally get their approvals. So let's see what happens in the next few months. I'd like to think that part of the deal is over and they are going to stay here and keep those jobs here. Another issue that is going on, well, two in fact, that I think are important. There's a company called Ferring Pharmaceuticals. They currently have their headquarters at Gate Hall Plaza. They're moving to Interpace Parkway. They're going to spend over $100 million to renovate the old Biomet facility on Interpace Parkway. We've been working with Ferring. There's a company here in Florham Park called Automatic Switch. They're part of Emerson Corporation. I've had several meetings with their senior management team, the mayor of Florham Park, and some other people in the last month or so. So the local management team of Automatic Switch is working to convince their corporate headquarters in St. Louis that they should keep the 400 jobs that are here in Florham Park at Automatic Switch into the future, and it's going to require them to make a number of changes to their current building. They have about 55 acres in Florham Park. So we're hopeful that's going to happen, and we're going to move forward with Automatic Switch in terms of staying in the community. You all know about Picatinny Arsenal. Close to 4,000 permanent jobs at Picatinny and about 1,000 contractors on an annual basis. I love the sound of planes, it's commerce. So about 6 months ago, I was asked by Congressman Frelinghuysen to put together a coalition which we're trying to institutionalize going forward to support Picatinny. And what's happening around the country is that in Alabama, in Maryland, in New York, and a number of other states, coalitions have formed around the whole issue of protecting military bases in that particular community or in that particular state. And so for Picatinny, it's not just the situation of in the next base realignment and closure commission, BRAC, they call it the BRAC process, where Congress names a commission, and that commission studies military bases around the country and comes back and makes recommendations as to what bases should stay open, what bases should close. That's what happened in the case of Monmouth. Monmouth ended up in the BRAC process and ended up closing. We obviously don't want that to happen to Picatinny Arsenal in Morris County. So we're putting together a coalition of companies. Some of the companies have major contracts at Picatinny, like General Dynamics, Raytheon. Other companies simply have an interest from a community standpoint. In some cases, obviously, in a JCP&L or a PSE&G, Picatinny is a customer for energy. So we're putting this coalition together, and it's really important that we institutionalize this because as we go forward, it's not just an issue of does Picatinny stay open or does it close? You've got the issue now where we see these state coalitions around the country going to their congressional delegations and saying, you know, there's a little piece of what Picatinny does that we can do in Alabama. There's a piece of what Picatinny does that we can do in Maryland. And so we're concerned that other states, other bases start to pick off pieces of the mission at Picatinny over time. And if you succeed in making Picatinny a lot smaller and less efficient over time, I think it's much more vulnerable to the whole BRAC process and the decision about whether Picatinny stays open or closes in the future. So that is 4,000 or 5,000 jobs at Picatinny that we think are important, that we ought to work to save and to keep here. And so if you're interested in the coalition, you know, see me after or let me know. So far, we've got the Morris County Freeholders, the Chamber, General Dynamics, PSE&G, JCP&L, some other companies we're talking to across the county and even into Sussex County about being involved in this. And what we're doing is we're raising some resources to hire a firm in Washington that's going to help us and provide intelligence to us about what all these other state coalitions are telling members of Congress so that we can understand who's trying to eat our lunch on a daily basis. And I think it's pretty important and pretty important for this community that we don't potentially lose 4,000 or 5,000 jobs in one fell swoop. The other issue that we're working on, the recession has not been kind to the commercial real estate market or the office market. We just did a study working with the commercial real estate industry, which we've shared with the mayor of Parsippany, because Parsippany is the biggest office market in Morris County. And it's so far, I guess I would have to say to you that it's still a confidential document. It's not like we're passing it out to anybody. But we've given the mayor about a 30-slide presentation with graphs and numbers, and we've done this by going out and figuring out who owns all these office buildings in a community like Parsippany. We've basically shown the mayor that he has about a 35% vacancy rate in commercial office space in Parsippany. And the issue is, as you see from what's happening with Rheology, right? Rheology is moving from their building on Route 10 near the Hilton to the new revamped building down the street here, which used to be the Verizon switching buildings. They basically gutted that and they're building it new as the new corporate office for Rheology. That's a good thing. At one point in the last year, there were people who were sitting in rooms with Rheology, and I wasn't one of them, but they were telling me there's a real chance Rheology is going to go to Virginia. 1,000 jobs. The governor's office and others got involved. Rheology is staying, but the point I'm making is that Rheology is moving out of a 1970s style building and saying, this is not appropriate for the work environment we want to have for our employees. It's not appropriate for the image we want to have for our company. So we're moving out of that building. We're going to move into a new building in Madison. There are lots of buildings like that throughout Morris County, and I think, historically, a community and the mayor of a community could say, well, people want to come to Morris County, right? Quality of life, open space, great schools. If we just sit here, somebody will knock on our door and, put 1,000 people back in that building. It's not going to happen. Companies, for the most part, are not looking for more space today. They're looking for less space. They're looking for more efficient space. They're looking for greener space. They're trying to look at the whole issue of flexibility in terms of letting more people either share space or work at home. And so these office buildings are not just going to get filled up, when the economy gets a little bit stronger. So we're trying to work with municipalities and with mayors to make them understand that in some cases they're going to have to do some rezoning. They're going to have to work with investors in the business community to figure out how do we find new uses for some of these buildings and these properties, because there's no way they're going to get filled up by employees any time in the next 5 years at a minimum. So as a county, we've got a lot of different challenges. We're fortunate that we obviously have a great pharma base here. We have people like BASF and Honeywell and Rheology who, have organizations that number in the thousands of jobs. Bayer is going to consolidate, obviously, in Hanover. We're working with Ron Francioli, the mayor of Hanover, on a number of things related to the Bayer project. But we've got some challenges as a county. When you have a 35% vacancy rate in Parsippany, it's a huge issue. We still have companies. I was talking to a guy the other night who has a lubricants business in Bayonne, where he does processing of oil products and other lubricants for the major oil companies. And he says to me, look, I have my operation in Bayonne, I have an operation in Pittsburgh. My taxes in New Jersey are 10 times what they are in Pittsburgh. And so I'm a supporter of what the governor's doing in Trenton. I think there needs to be a bull in a china shop in Trenton, and he's it right now, and that's a good thing. But as a state, we still have a competitive situation that we're dealing with in terms of people's ability who have capital, investors' ability, or entrepreneurs' ability to decide, I can basically do my business in Connecticut or Pennsylvania. I don't have to be in New Jersey. So how do we get New Jersey even more competitive going forward? And it's obviously not something that Chris Christie is going to cure in a year or two after those guys have been having a big party in Trenton for the last 30 years. But we've got to move in that direction because we're still not viewed, even though I think we're viewed by the business community better than we were 3 or 4 years ago, we still have to face the reality that we're not by any means a low-cost state relative to where you would invest your money or grow a business. So those are some of the challenges. You know, the Chamber works on all of these issues with many of the companies that I've mentioned are members of the Chamber. We obviously have relationships with elected officials across the county. We're trying to get much closer to the mayors and the people that work for them, because a number of those people at the bureaucracy level in local government are holding up permits in some cases for businesses who are trying to get things done. We just did a seminar earlier this year where we brought in like 60 people who work for local governments and tried to take them through a day-long seminar on, you know, the business community is not the enemy. So when somebody comes to you for a permit and it's something that they need in a certain period of time, it ought to be treated seriously, and we can't have, I get calls all the time from people saying, hey, you know, I got this permit request in with this town and it's been sitting on Joe's desk for 2 months. It's starting to cost me some money if I can't get that permit. And so we're trying to work with the towns closer to get them to think differently about people who come to them and treat them as customers, as opposed to, you know, gee, you're messing up my day here by asking me to do something for you. So those are the kinds of things we're involved in. If there's anything you're working on that I can help you with, and again, I know the challenges you have as small businesses, and I don't need to get up here and tell you what they are, but if there's anything the Chamber, obviously 50% of our membership are companies 1 to 10 employees. 50% of our companies are bigger than that. So we have about 850 companies in the Chamber now, and if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. Thanks.